Hey everybody, my name is Ed Trevors. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm an Anglican priest in the Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, and I get to serve in the beautiful town of Shelburne, Nova Scotia, in the awesome parish of Christ Church, Shelburne, that sits on the ancestral and on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I give thanks for you all every day. I thank God especially for all that you teach me and all that you share with me in your comments and in your emails. The other day in my reading, I stumbled across that old story of the sword of Damocles. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but if you haven't heard it, let me share with you my understanding of it. Damocles was the attendant of a king. And one day he was telling this king just how fortunate he must be and how fortunate he must feel and how awesome he is because he's so rich and so powerful and he has so much. And the king, he wasn't really feeling it that day. He wasn't feeling especially grateful for what he had. He was actually feeling a great deal of stress, feeling a great deal of anxiety. And he wanted Damocles to understand why he was feeling that. And so he made a deal. He said, I'm going to let you be king for the day. But you've got to sit on the throne, and I'm going to hang something above your head. I'm going to hang a sword. And that sword is going to hang there by one hair from a horse's tail all day long. So Damocles, he sat there in that throne underneath that sword all day long. And he had all the blessings of the king. He had everything that the king had. Damocles has access to it. And the entire day, he sat there terrified. He sat there terrified, waiting for that sword to drop. He sat there absolutely terrified. The sword was going to, the hair was going to break, and the sword was going to drop and slice through him and kill him. And that's exactly what the king wanted him to know. The king wanted him to know that being king came with a lot of tension, came with a lot of pressure. The king constantly lived under the threat that someone was soon going to come along, take his life, and take all that was meaningful to him. So there's lots of different morality lessons we can take out of this story, and I'm certain what I'm about to offer you is not one of them. Because as I was reading this, I thought about poor Damocles sitting there, right? He's stressed, he's freaking out, there's a sword hanging over his head, hanging by a horse's hair. Not a horse's hair, the hair of a horse's tail hanging there over him. Yeah, okay, he had every reason in the world to be terrified. He had reason to be worried. He had reason to live in tension and stress. At any moment, that thing could come crashing down. But the thought that popped into my brain was, fair enough, Damocles could see the sword. Is there a sword hanging over you? Do you see a sword hanging over you? I mean, we live these lives of worry and strain and stress. We live these lives where we are working continuously and constantly trying to maintain what we have, trying to stay one step ahead in the race. We're continuously working ourselves to the grave, trying to keep our lives from falling apart. Right? Trying to keep everything in order, trying to keep everything that we have, trying to protect all that we've managed to gather. But do you see a sword? Is there anything hanging over our lives, any threat, any issue so great that it could literally prematurely end or ruin our lives? Yes, I'm certain there's a lot of things that could happen that would absolutely cause trouble, that would cause issues, that would cause us to scramble, that would cause us to flex, that would cause us to look for new ways of moving forward. But how many things are hanging over us that would actually end or ruin our lives forever? Because that's kind of how we live. We live in this society, we live like people who literally have swords hanging over them. We live like people who are literally trying to keep our worlds from falling apart. We live like people who are literally trying to keep life from ending. But how many threats are actually looming above us with that kind of power? How many threats are looming above us that could in an instant take everything away from us? I mean, if I look at my own life, and listen, I'm preaching to myself here. If I look at my own life, there are things that I'm worried about. There are standards that I'm trying to achieve. There's work that I'm trying to do. There are things that I want to accomplish. And on some days, in some moments, I find myself in a deep place of worry. You know, for example, doing these videos, there are times when I feel pressure because I want to offer something really, really good. And that pressure can sometimes get the best of me. You know, remember the whole perfect is the enemy of the good thing. And I'll worry. But if I put out a bad video, let's say I put out the world's worst video, and all of you folks, you decide, that's it, we're done with this crazy fellow, we're going somewhere else. And none of you ever come back, and I never hear from you ever again, and I never have the encounters ever again. What did that actually do to me? Right, well, I'm not a YouTube star. I can live with that. Right? If I lost my job, I lost my house, yes, we'd have to scramble. We'd have to find a new way of being. We'd have to find a way of getting by, but I would. It'd be hard. We'd probably have to give up a lot, but we could do it. Because I wouldn't be losing everything. Now, see, part of this is understanding what everything actually is. You know, what life actually is. I look at life maybe differently than others. I look at life as being who I'm meant to be. Being the person that God created me to be. And I don't believe that has anything to do with the physical world. I don't believe there's anything I've ever encountered that could stop me from growing and becoming a better person tomorrow. And part of it is just also understanding that there are very few things in our lives that have that kind of power over us. So this has been my thought experiment for the last day or so, has been, do I see a sword? Is there a sword hanging there? Or do I just feel like it? Is there a sword hanging over you? Or does it just feel like it? May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you, and may you forever know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray that as you look around, I pray there are no swords waiting to fall. Amen.